Wait,
No.
So your testimony is if it's issued by Judge Kaczmarek, it's bad?
No, sir.
It's personal?
That is not my testimony.
Is the problem with the injunction? You were criticizing the universal injunction
issued by a judge in a single judge division. I've been very clear today that those are a problem.
By a Republican judge in a Republican division, then it's bad.
No, Senator.
Otherwise, it's fine.
No, Senator. I think that single judge divisions
What is the
are a problem.
principal difference? I'm looking for a principle. I understand you hate the president. I understand you love all of these rulings against him. You and I both know that's not a principle. You're a lawyer. What's the principle that divides when issuing a nationwide injunction is okay when it's not? When the Biden administration was subject to nationwide injunctions, you said that they were travesties for the principle of democracy. You didn't say the referral to Judge Kaczmarek was a travesty. You said his injunction was a travesty for principles of democracy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so that was just an intro. I've got a fascinating clip for you guys today. It's about 8 minutes long, but it is one hell of an 8-minute clip. That is to say the least. We're going over nationwide injunctions. And when we have a hearing on nationwide injunctions, what does that mean, folks? We're about to get some legislation involving these nationwide injunctions, and hopefully this legislation bans them outright. Hopefully these judges can't do this anymore. You guys know where I stand on this, but this is going to get good. Josh Hawley just tries to get something out of this lady on what is your standard principles here. Like, we want some consistency, but we get no consistency from Democrats because Democrats have no principles. But enough of my ranting. Let's get into this clip, folks. It is fascinating.
Let me just start with you, if I could, Professor Shaw. You talked about the fact that there have been lots of rulings against the Trump administration. That's absolutely statistically true. I disagree with almost all of them. In fact, I think all of them. But the issue of this hearing really isn't the rulings, is it? It's the remedies. Would you agree? And those are distinct things. You may think that the ruling is quite correct, but that's actually not what we're talking about here today. We could have a hearing on that. Maybe we should. But we're talking today about the remedy. And the question is a remedy that binds parties who are not before the court, is that an appropriate thing? I mean, aren't you concerned about judges binding non-parties in their remedies? You may love the ruling, but even if you do, don't you think it's a little bit anomalous for courts to be going out there and binding parties who are not before them? I mean, is that something we want to encourage?
Senator, I think that judges have been issuing rulings that impact non-parties since Marbury versus Madison, right?
So you're not concerned about it?
I'm not. I absolutely think that they can be abused, and they have been abused.
Wait a minute. You were very concerned about it just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You said in response to a nationwide injunction on the Biden FDA's mifepristone rules, and I quote, "This injunction's a travesty for principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law."
I think I've been consistent today. That was issued by Judge Kaczmarek in a single judge division. They're a problem. Those are a problem.
With him personally? Wait,
No.
So your testimony is if it's issued by Judge Kaczmarek, it's bad?
No, sir.
It's personal?
That is not my testimony.
Is the problem with the injunction? You were criticizing the universal injunction
issued by a judge in a single judge division. I've been very clear today that those are a problem.
By a Republican judge in a Republican division, then it's bad.
No, Senator.
Otherwise, it's fine.
No, Senator. I think that single judge divisions are a problem.
What is the principal difference? I'm looking for a principle. I understand you hate the president. I understand you love all of these rulings against him. You and I both know that's not a principle. You're a lawyer. What's the principle that divides when issuing a nationwide injunction is okay when it's not? When the Biden administration was subject to nationwide injunctions, you said that they were travesties for the principle of democracy. You didn't say the referral to Judge Kaczmarek was a travesty. You said his injunction was a travesty for principles of democracy.
Spoiler alert, he's never going to get a principled answer, not from a Democrat at least. You love how she comes out and starts that off. I think judges have been impacting rulings that, affect non-binding parties, if you will, since blah, 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 blah. That doesn't mean it's correct. That doesn't mean that is a good place for the United States to be, right? I mean, like the FBI was spying on the American people for a long time. Does that make it okay? Does that mean that it's fine? The CIA going out and, cooing other governments for crying out loud? Does that make these things okay? No, it doesn't. Absolutely doesn't. And that is not a good answer, but let's keep going.
So, in other words, the translation is just you didn't like the outcome. Is that right?
No, Senator. Look, we're talking about, I don't think Article 3 precludes this form of relief. So we are talking about prudential considerations.
Prudential meaning political?
No.
Then
no.
give me, so far I have yet to hear it. You've been questioned by multiple senators. I have yet to hear a principle other than the fact when you like the ruling, you think it's great to apply it nationally, including non-parties. When you don't like the ruling, it is a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law.
Look, Senator, I'll say I think I am self-aware enough to know that my view of the underlying legal question, I am sure colors my perception of the remedy. I think that we should all acknowledge that. And yet I do think
and why shouldn't we stop nationwide injunctions for everybody?
I think that's
what we're talking about today.
Because I'm not willing to leave without relief non-parties who
No,
are
you're
injured.
not willing to leave without the ability to bind President Trump.
No, I
right?
think that...
I mean, when it's Biden, it's okay. No. When it's Biden, oh, it's a travesty. When it's Trump in office, it's, oh, no holds barred, whatever it takes, right?
I believe in
like
a powerful...
What was it that President Biden's staff said? We've got to do undemocratic, unconstitutional things to save democracy. Why is this the same
I believe
thing?
in a powerful president. I do believe in presidential power, but power and constraint are not at fundamental odds.
What is the principle?
Power.
What is the principle? The legal principle. You've referenced prudence. You've referenced the judges you don't like. What's the principle of when an injunction binding non-parties, which was never done in this country before the 1960s? And let's see the chart, the Trump chart, which was done really only once Trump came into office for the first time. You don't think this is a little bit anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit strange?
A very plausible explanation, Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents.
Oh, so that's your excuse. Oh, Donald Trump is just a rogue president who's violating the federal law all over the damn place, right? Like how? Like seriously, like give me something here. Deporting criminal aliens, for crying out loud? Did we have any nationwide injunctions on the Biden administration for deporting criminal aliens? Did we have any nationwide injunctions for Obama, who has deported by far many, many, many more criminal aliens than Donald Trump has? This is absurd. Now, I can see, right, some of Donald Trump's actions, right, like the birthright citizenship executive order. Yes, this needs to go through the courts, for crying out loud, but I'm sorry. The Alien Enemies Act, anybody can look at what's going on across that southern border and see clearly that these people have invaded our country. Tren de Aragua has taken over apartment complexes, and you have the corporate press over here trying to deny it and trying to cover it up, for crying out loud, and not trying to tell the story to the American people, trying to say, oh no, nothing's going on over here. That is outright absurd. When we don't allow the President of the United States to keep the citizenry of the United States safe, is absurd. When you stop him from arresting, detaining, and deporting these people, for goodness sakes, is absurd. Once again, folks, when they issue these nationwide injunctions, that is across the entire nation, a single judge, once again, stopping the administration from firing people. We'll go over all of my opinions at the end of this. I just had to interject right there because that really ticked me off.
Right.
You don't think this was never
possibility.
used before the 1960s, and suddenly Democrat judges decide we love the nationwide injunction, and then when Biden comes to office, no, actually.
It's Republican appointees as well, Senator. And the 1960s is where some scholars locate the beginning of this.
Can you identify one before then?
Mila Sahoni, who's another scholar of universal injunction, suggests 1913 is actually the first, and others in the 20s.
The Republic endured for 150 years before there was a nationwide injunction.
Well, the federal government was doing a lot less until 100 years ago. So there's many things that have changed in the last 100 or the last 50 years.
So long as it is a Democrat president in office, then we should have no nationwide injunctions. If it's a Republican president, then this is absolutely fine, warranted, and called for. How can our system of law survive on those principles, Professor?
I think a system in which there are no meaningful constraints on the president is a very dangerous system of law.
That's not what you thought when Joe Biden. That is not what you thought when Joe Biden was
every president
you
is
said that is not what
and
you
must
said.
be. Absolutely.
You said it was a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law. You also said
the Supreme Court senator agreed 9-0 with me on that.
You also said when Joe Biden was president, you said the idea that anyone would foreign shop to get a judge who would issue a nationwide injunction was just judges looking like politicians in robes. Again, it threatened the underlying legal system. People just trying to get the result they wanted. It was a travesty for the rule of law. But you're fine with all of that if it's getting the result that you want.
Sir, the Supreme Court agreed unanimously with me in that case, right? There was no standing. The case should never have been allowed to proceed. And the combination of parties without standing and the single judge division.
I agree. That's totally irrelevant to the principal's argument here.
No. We're talking. No, they did not. They did not issue a ruling on the nationwide injunction. You criticized the injunction nationwide. Listen,
issued in a case where no one had standing.
On this. Here's the thing. We've now gone 6 minutes, and Senator Kennedy had you for 6 or 7. You couldn't identify a single principled basis. We all know the truth here, which is it's not just you. It's most of my colleagues over here on this side of the aisle, who I respect a great deal, and they were raising very principled objections to the nationwide injunction just 6 months ago, maybe 9 now. And you're probably right. My point is that all that's changed in 9 months is the occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And I realize that my colleagues on this side of the aisle very much dislike that individual. And I realize that you think that the rulings that he has lost are fundamentally sound. We might grant all of that. I disagree with all of that, but we can put that to one side. The question we're talking about here is, should judges, single judges, district court judges, be able to bind non-parties who are not in front of them? And you used to say no, now you say yes. Let's be consistent. I would just suggest to you our system of government cannot survive if it's going to be politics all the way down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I briefly respond?
Sure.
I mean, you invoked democracy a couple of times there, Senator. Judges are part of our system of democracy. Democracy is not as simple as majority rule. Judges have always served something of a
You would have it be as simple as
function.
majority rule. When you get the majority you like, you're for the nationwide injunction. When you don't, you're not.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, Hawley just absolutely destroyed that lady, in my opinion, right there, because where's your principles? Where are they? It's okay when there's a nationwide injunction against Donald Trump, when there's relentless nationwide injunctions against Donald Trump, right? I think Donald Trump has over 70% of all nationwide injunctions ever imposed on a president of the United States on Donald Trump, for crying out loud. And it's with everything, for goodness sakes, right? There were no nationwide injunctions against Bill Clinton when he fired 400,000 federal employees. None. There were some lawsuits. No nationwide injunctions, for goodness sakes. There were no nationwide injunctions when they changed the statutory requirements for entering the military. There were no nationwide injunctions against any president for any of these things. It is absurd, right? Think about this for a second. Nationwide injunction, boom, here we go. You got to stop doing this when DOJ comes in. It's the federal government. This an advisory board of the federal government comes in to audit the federal government. We want to see what these federal employees have been doing all over the place. And guess who stops it? A single federal judge in a district far away from Washington, D.C. stops DOJ from auditing the federal government, right? Get this. The federal government auditing itself is stopped by guess who? Not just a single judge, but a non-governmental organization, for goodness sakes, and some labor unions, for crying out loud. Absurd. Absurd. You mean we can't audit the federal government? Oh, well, we have inspector generals for doing this, blah, 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 blah. And we have these government watchdogs. Well, they obviously haven't been doing their job since DOJ came in and found what they found, didn't they? This is all insane. These nationwide injunctions, I'm so glad. Like, once again, folks, I say this all the time. I am glad that Donald Trump lost in 2020, and I have no problem saying that. Yeah, he lost. He got outplayed by the Democrats. I'm not saying outvoted. He got outplayed by the Democrats. Yeah, he lost in 2020. I'm glad. I'm really glad, because we would have had Mike Pence for another freaking 4 years. That sucks, right? But it opened Donald Trump's eyes. The Biden administration come in and thought that they can just throw the Constitution away and just do whatever the hell they wanted to. And they almost did. There were a couple of nationwide injunctions against the Biden administration. And I love how they were discussing venue shopping, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But they come in and they start, lawfare out the wazoo, spying on American citizens, having Americans booted from social media, for crying out loud. That was a nationwide injunction against the Biden administration. Forced him to stop, right? There was another one, and none of the corporate press, nobody, hardly anybody except people on the right, when there was a nationwide injunction stopping the Biden administration from going through with its student loan forgiveness. Went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said no. Guess what the Biden administration did? Oh, let's revamp. Hang on, let's regroup and come over here, and we'll just do it anyway. None of the corporate press said, oh, he's violating the Supreme Court orders. We have an authoritarian, folks. And, with Donald Trump coming in and investigating the auto pen, if you will, I'm loving that, by the way, because was Joe Biden in charge of his mental faculties when all those executive orders and those actions were taken? I would love to figure that one out. As a matter of fact, I read a news article earlier, James Comer. They're still investigating Joe Biden. They're calling for some more of Biden's aides and his advisors to come in and testify, closed-door deposition, to testify about Biden's mental acuity. They are putting the pieces of the puzzle together, folks, and this is going to be great. This is going to be great. I can't wait to see what these people testify to and see how that pans out, right? But all these nationwide injunctions against the Trump administration, most of them are just patently absurd. Just blatantly absurd, just outright. The Alien Enemies Act, all the nationwide injunctions against deportations, for crying out loud. Deportations, it's absurd. It really is. Now, I understand the birthright citizenship. Hey, look, I get it. That needs to go through the court system, like I said earlier. That's something we need a constitutional amendment to clarify the 14th, because it can be interpreted in several different ways right there. But most of Donald Trump's actions that he is taking, it falls under the Constitution clearly. The Alien Enemies Act was simply meant to give the president powers when we're getting invaded, right? This is what that means. If they were to rule against the Trump administration from using the Alien Enemies Act, that means, get this, if we get invaded by any force, doesn't matter, if we get invaded, and let's just say some lunatic wants to stop Donald Trump from actually sending the army to go and handle this invading force, he will have to go through the court system. That's how absurd that ruling is. It's just insanity. And these Democrats, they don't have principles. We know this. That's why she couldn't answer the question honestly. Couldn't answer it, just outright. And I just love this. It's insane. And once again, this is why people are leaving the Democratic Party by the droves, folks. By the droves. People are just leaving the left, if you will. But, getting back to the topic at hand here, I really hope they propose and pass some sort of legislation that outlaws nationwide injunctions, right? I think that if there's going to be anything that looks like a nationwide injunction, that should derive directly from the Supreme Court. I think that would be okay, because the case would have to go up to the Supreme Court and then stop the administration if there is a rogue administration breaking the law, like this lady said. Oh, well, maybe we've never. That was just so patently absurd, if you ask me. Once again, folks, these people are just insane. They're deranged with Donald Trump. But, the Supreme Court, I think if any court, that would be the one. And I think, some sort of 2/3 majority. Right, not just half of them. I think a 2/3 majority would be needed. That would be something like, okay, they most of them agree. Let's go ahead and stop the administration from doing such and such, whatever it may be, right? But the Supreme Court would be where that power derives from, in my opinion. I don't know. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that down in the comment section. I think that's not a bad idea. But however, I think they should do away with them at all, because having parties that are completely disconnected from what is going on in the courtroom, right? That means judges issuing these nationwide injunctions are affecting people that have nothing to do with the court case at all. They are not in front of the judge. None of that. Just, it could be something affecting you, for goodness sakes, and you do not have anything to do with that situation whatsoever. It's insane. And I know that the argument from Democrats over here is like, well, what do you expect them to do? Everybody in the country to file a lawsuit? Yes! That is what the court system is for. And there's also this neat little invention called class action lawsuits where you can just sign on to it. That's it. You go to a lawyer or contact the main attorneys or whatever for that case, and you sign on to that class action lawsuit, for goodness sakes. That's how these things should go. It should not be just a single judge in some far-off district making a decision because they happen to be deranged with Donald Trump over here, saying, oh, well, he can't do this, even though the direct language in the Constitution gives him the authority to take such action. It is absurd what is going on in this country. This is how far Democrats have gone to attempt to stop Donald Trump. And I've played the clip several times from Chuck Schumer. They knew that Trump could be coming back. They put 235 progressive judges on the circuit just to stop the Trump administration from carrying out its constitutional duties. I mean, it's insane. The Biden administration goes rogue and does its thing and just destroys this nation. Destroys any semblance of law and order, any semblance of border security, destroys all kinds of things, right? And Donald Trump comes back in and tries to fix this, and then we get these activist judges trying to stop him, issuing nationwide injunctions. It's insane. It really is, folks. She calls that democracy. That's not democracy. That is authoritarianism. Just outright. But y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.